All right, good morning. Delighted to have you all join us here today. We've aligned an awesome panel of speakers today, and you've already heard from a couple of them. And so, you've heard a bunch of people really good in the private sector. I'm going to shift gears a bit, and we're going to talk about how you make an impact in the public services space and government and public sector. And it's a very different path that you chart in that sector, but I would argue infinitely more rewarding. And so technology has enabled us to provide citizen services at scale. And as we learned through these last 2 years, when physical access has been curtailed, digital enables us to overcome traditional barriers and solve some of these old problems in new and completely amazing ways. And rather than hear me talk about it, I thought it'd be great if I could invite on stage with us Dr. Seema Khanna, Deputy Director General at the National Informatics Center. Dr. Khanna, delighted to have you here at Nirmaan, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear from you. How does one lead and drive the kind of outsized impact that you've made in the government and public sector space? So, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad to be here.
Exactly. And so, just to, kick things off, I thought it'd be a good idea for you to just talk about your journey a little bit, in terms of how did you pick this area of interest and what's been a journey as you've grown in your career?
Okay, so I would like to believe, like all of us would like to believe, you've all had very interesting journeys. So it's sometimes, I was told when I was very young that either be good enough to get what you want, or you'll be forced to like what you get. So that is something my mother drummed into me, and we all strive to achieve wherever we want to, and most of what we achieve in life is the age I come from. Of course, I would not like to believe I'm a fossil yet, but still, when you go back a few years, you generally tend to believe in what your parents wanted to align yourself to. We come from an age, at least I would like to believe, in doctors and engineers were the only two primary professions at that point in time, which were considered. I mean, the canvas and the plethora of options available to the kids of today were not a luxury that we had when we were very young. So it was largely engineering or medical. So before I get into my professional journey, we need to take a few steps back, what led me to here.
Yes.
I come from a forces family. I'm very proud that generations have served the nation, and I would like to believe in my own humble way, I continue to serve the nation where it wants me to deliver. And I come from an armed forces family. My father, my brother, my husband, he's a brigadier in the army. So we are all serving the nation in our own way. But when I was young and I was doing my 12th, that was the time when I got admission into engineering. And I was told by the cousins of the family that engineering is a male-dominated field. You're going to be very better off going to Lady Prebon and doing English honors. And that was the thought which was I was put into. And my mother, I would like to believe that I'm a very strong woman, and I've been raised by a very strong woman, and I would like to give my mother credit. And she's the one who is, touch wood, by God's grace, 80 today. And she's the one at that point in time said, nothing doing. My daughter is going to do what she wants to do. And she's the one who led the way for me to get into engineering. And Delhi College of Engineering at that time had just about 9 girls in a class of 43. And I did a fairly decent job. I would not like to say great, top of the class, but I was good. So that is how I started off getting into the world of a so-called male-dominated field, which I never for a moment believed was male-dominated because I left my mark there. And then I came into government. I did not have the luxury to see both the worlds, although from campus, I got admission, I got a job from the campus, and that was a very brief stint of 6 months before I got into the government. And when I got into the government, I came into the government when obviously the corporate salaries had a lot of difference at that time also.
Yes.
We work in the government because we want to be here. I would like to believe that we want to make a difference. I would like to believe that we have takers in the corporate too, but I would like to believe that where I am because I want to be here. And I wanted to be here. And when I joined here, again, it was a journey. It was an absolute journey because government, I feel, has been it's a very, very warm and hospitable place for professionals.
Okay.
Because we are allowed, we have the luxury to operate the way we want to. We are not restricted by areas. This is not your area. this is not your place of work. You're not supposed to be working on this project, or this is the project given to you, stick to that. We are not bound by those limitations.
Which is interesting, right? Because a lot of us would feel that the government space is very constrained, and
So again, I would like to believe that the organization I represent is different, in the sense we are a hardcore technical backbone, and I see needs no introduction. And I see as an organization needs no introduction. We drive the backbone of the country. So when it comes to technology, we are the pioneers. We lead the way. So especially in my organization, we are not bound by areas of work. If I have the vision to deliver on a project, more often than not, my ecosystem supports me. If I go to my competent authority and present a proposal and say that I can deliver on that, I'm most often given the chance to do it, which is why I've achieved what I have so far in life. Because I kept my own milestones. In Sarkar, it's very easy not to deliver at times, because if you let the ecosystem get to you, but on the same foot, it's very easy to deliver too. Because then every human identifies with a spark. If they feel you have a spark, and with the conviction with which you present your case, more often than not, your seniors would back you up. And I've been very lucky that I've had seniors in my life who have backed up the proposals I've gone to. And another thing that I was told as part of my journey when I started off, again by a very strong woman, my mother, that if you want to succeed in life, make sure your boss succeeds. So I totally believe in that. So I've always delivered on the vision of my bosses, my seniors, who of course, again, are brilliant people whom I work with, a brilliant team. So it's been a very interesting journey, and I'm grateful to God that I've reached where I have. My technical skills, the freedom given to me by my organization. So it's been a very enriching and rewarding journey when I look back on my 27 years since college. It's been an exceptionally rewarding journey. So I'm very happy where I am today.
That's fascinating to hear. And, in many ways, your experience, demolishes some of these common, myths that people have about what you can and can't do in government, especially in the tech space, right? Because you think, hey, you know what, this, and so it's great to hear that. But even in the context of what you do in government, the last couple of years would have been, another level of challenge altogether, right? So tell us a little bit about how things have been in this pandemic environment.
Yeah, 2 years, actually 2 years. It's been the same for all of us. We've all struggled. Yeah. Life took a pause. Now, this is a question I've been answering very many times over the past 2 years, because I've had many interviews and sessions when it comes to the brilliant delivery of platform that we as a government gave to the nation. And the 2 years was an outcome, at the initial stages. So pandemic forced us to put a pause button. It definitely forced us to put a pause button. It forced us to reflect on life. So all of us have had our learnings. We were compelled to learn, rather, because we were forced to step off the roller coaster that we called our life. So we all have had various learning experiences, and some of us have seen it more close up, because we were thrust into an environment where we were supposed to respond, not only for ourselves, but for the people around us. Yeah. So professionally, I would come to later, but personally, the 2 years of the journey has been, there are very many things which I've learned. One, of course, the most important thing is that I am, my children, my daughters used to always say, "Mommy comes, mommy goes," because they've just seen me. I've seen my kids grow up while sleeping. I think majority of the women who have kind of delivered on their expectations of their service calls it's true for all of them, I'm sure. So this is a mommy comes and mommy goes. And at that point in time, the 2 years, it has been like family matters, actually family matters. It compelled you to take a step back and feel that family matters. Stuff like that, small little things. And the other thing that I learned was that, no matter how much technology you have, the hug that you get from your mom is not something a technology can replace. And when I had Corona, I was away from my mom for 1 full month. And you cannot possibly, no matter the technology, cannot replace the warm hug of a person you love, a person who loves you. So at a human level, those small things which you tend to overlook, it kind of brought it in front. It made you realize certain things. It made you realize that, another thing, it made you realize that just to be productive, you don't need to be in office. which is something perhaps you guys in the corporate are more familiar with than we in Sarkar. So more so because we have that 9 to 5 concept, just because you come to office does not mean you're delivering. But somehow the thought process is if you enter office at 9, you're at work. But that's a very loose translation of delivering on your work. But that's how the ecosystem works. But these 2 years taught us that to be productive, I actually don't need to be on my chair. I can be anywhere. I can be actually anywhere. We've seen people deliver. And the most important thing is that the concept of space was very overrated. I mean, we are sitting in an isolated room for 1 month and nobody to talk to you except calls. You forget that I need space, It doesn't matter anymore. I just want to be with somebody. So that was the personal evolvement, which I would like to say I believed in. But from a professional point, the 2 years has been that, the generosity of spirit when it comes to sharing the ideas, sharing technologies. I mean, Arogya Setu, I'm very fortunate that, again, like I said, I got a chance to contribute to one of the largest app of the world globally, where India has made its standing in a very remarkable way. We put a digital footprint on the world.
And in such a short time, right?
Oh, 3 weeks. Yeah. 3 weeks. It was rolled out in 3 weeks. And the only way it was possible was because of the generosity of the spirit of the people involved, both from the corporate, you people, volunteers. Everybody just chipped in. At that point in time, people forgot who's who. I mean, they were all willing to, and it was amazing the way people came together with their ideas, some brilliant ideas. The technology has never been more aptly used. I mean, ideas that sprung from somewhere. I mean, Arogya, the only positive outcome professionally of the past 2 years is the amount of ideas it has sprung, the amount of startups it has led to. It's given birth to so many creative innovations, such brilliant innovations that it is, and during the 2 years when I was, Arogya Setu was at its peak, at that point, the kind of ideas that were coming to us to embrace, some of them we could, some of them we could not, but they were brilliant. So from a professional standpoint, the generosity of spirit, and the most important part that I learned is we are a brilliant nation. I mean, we have so much brilliance and we have such good kids coming out of the block, while there are many disappointments also, which I face every second day. And I'm very rough with people who disappoint me. But at the same time, the brilliance that the young kids of today showcased, it was tremendous. I mean, I'm so happy to see what came out of it.
It's like what they say, right? You don't waste a crisis, right? And you could go under, but it brings to fore some things that you would otherwise.
Well put. Yes, yeah. Very well put. We definitely did not waste a crisis. We actually channelized it into a very good way. We have emerged much better technically, emotionally at the end of 2 years. I would like to believe that.
Yes. And in terms of driving that level of impact, what kept you going? Because while as you look back, I'm sure it's really good, but I can imagine it must have been a terribly stressful time, right? The whole nation is looking to you to deliver. There's and this is completely uncharted territory. We've never done this before, right? So how was that time? Personally for you, working with your teams, you as a female leader, bringing people together, especially all the things that you used to, because you're in office talking to teams. All of those things are not possible, right? So just curious to see how you dealt with that.
It was very good. I mean, one, of course, the timelines. I mean, there was no concept of 9 to 5. I mean, I had Corona for 1 month of that during that time. But that time also, what kept you going is that there was no barrier in between. We had free access to the highest level in the country. And that was it was so liberating a thing. I mean, today, again, the channels are back. You take one step at a time. But at that time, it really didn't matter. You could pick up the phone and speak to anybody who's who. And they were there to support you. I mean, they were there to motivate you. There was a time when I had Corona and people, my seniors, very seniors, my director general, another lady, very strong, very empowering, wonderful lady who's driving such a large organization. My secretary, I mean, they were motivating you to the extent that you just did not have any reason to give up. I mean, it was just there. It was the nation's call. And every moment when you felt you made a difference, when you felt that Honorable PM, when he announced that, Arogya Setu has to be taken, I mean, that was a day when we were waiting for him to announce it, all geared up from the technology standpoint, and he announced it, and we were not even prepared for the scale of downloads that happened. Yeah. I mean, they were so tremendous, and I was just sitting on the edge of the seat that the app should respond, because we had never created an app to that scale. And moreover, the most gray area of Arogya Setu was we couldn't predict the downloads. We were hoping for absolute large scale downloads, but none of us could predict how many are actually going to download. And we were praying that the technology that we've built is going to respond to the downloads that we get. And I remember that day when he announced it, and we were all with our fingers crossed, and we were all sitting in a room, and it was a physical meeting we were happening, and we could see the numbers, going up. And we was just saying, and the SMS, a very small element of the delivery chain, but if you don't get the SMS, you can't register. You just can't register. And you needed to have not only the app, you needed even something that's so low in the technology food chain, something like an SMS that is supposed to deliver in seconds. If an SMS does not come in 2 seconds, you're going to be on Twitter. That Arogya Setu is not going to work. And every end to end had to be so well oiled. And I remember that day so, Lyle, I'm going to take it to my grave. And when it came, and then we see all the numbers churning up, and after Honorable PM stopped speaking, and then we started seeing a slight decline, a dip in the downloads. That's when I had my first cup of tea. It was an amazing day of my life. And that experience, that exhilarating experience that you get, that you have served when the nation asked for it. And I speak on behalf of the full team. I mean, I'm sitting here taking perhaps credit for everything and perhaps trying to be the face of something which was actually a collective mandate. I mean, everybody worked. You name the people in my system, my director general, my secretary, the person I report to, Mr. R.S. Mani, who's the architect, the volunteers. I mean, I don't know where to stop. It was just a team effort, and it was.
And these are the days that make it all worthwhile. No? I mean, you do these things, and then it all comes together, and you just feel this is what you.
Yes, and the best thing is that when the highest office says "good job," you feel wow.
If you're 10 feet tall, right?
Yes. I'm barely 5 feet, so I guess I can go 10 feet. Yes, of course. So yes, it was a good day, and I'm just so happy that we could deliver on the expectation of the nation. And now I'm not too sure if it's too early to speak, but Arogya Setu is going to take another avatar of being the health app of the nation. So I hope we continue to deliver on that too. It's going to transition now, because the need for the Arogya Setu as a contact tracing app is diminished, because the nation is emerging from this crisis. So we need to restructure it, transform it, transition it into what the nation now demands and requires. So it's transitioning to that. And again, that's going to be a brilliant learning experience.
And like you said, NIC's work is never done, right? There's always another mountain to climb.
Yes.
And
that's what keeps you going. That's always what keeps you going. Yeah.
But, even before this, just looking back a bit, even when the previous project that is very closely associated with you, the government's email system, right? I mean, that was also it was a different time. Technology was different, but in its own way, it was no less innovative, right? How tell us a little bit about how that turned out.
Oh, those are I like to call them my cup days. I mean, I would like to believe I'm a lioness now, so I call that my cup days.
I think a few of us would believe that. So
okay, but I tell my team, I said that I did during my cup days. So email, and there's a statement that goes in Sarkar that says behind every male there's a female, because it's actually the MAIL, and it's this thing. So that's how the connotation goes. But yeah, email has also been a tremendous journey. It's been a tremendous journey, because email is very close to my heart for the simple reason that that was SMTP as a protocol. The technology audience would relate to what I'm saying. I mean, when SMTP as a protocol was just coming out in the early mid-90s, that's the time when I joined Sarkar. And at that time, it was emerging as a protocol, and I took it upon myself. Like I said, I presented this proposal to then decision makers, and I found that what I was reading on the net, I was just fresh out of college, and I was reading it, and I seriously felt something in me told me this is going to be the future. Email is going to drive the nation, because I somehow could figure out, and you would like to call it my vision, my technical vision, or whatever. I just could immediately relate to that concept. And I said, this is a technology that is here to stay. Not that as an email as a protocol, as a service came into existence in the 90s. It came in way back in 70s when ARPANET and all was rolled out. But I'm talking about SMTP as a protocol when it started rolling out on a large scale. That's one around in mid 90s. So I focused on that, and I was given the freedom when nobody in the country, government was the first to roll it out at that point in time. And when nobody in the country was doing that, and I approached my seniors, and they said, okay, go ahead. I mean, I'm not the kind who listens to a no easily any which way. My tenacity, and I'm like a bulldog. So I went to them and I said, can I do it? And they said, yeah, go ahead, do it. So I started off with something like as small as a 64 MB of RAM. I mean, I don't know how many of you related, 2 GB of secondary disk. That's something, those, things that today are not even available. They might be in a museum, it's artifact of some old age gone. I started doing that. But the quantum jump to the service came in when Y2K happened. That's when people realized that this is good. So the service started evolving and I started getting response the way I expected from the government. And then the major transition happened in the year 2015 when the email policy of the government of India. That also has a very interesting story behind it. Because when I was rolled out as a service, the easiest thing to do was throw a stone, that isme ye problem hai, usme wo problem hai. And the forever comparison with the largest service provider to the world. And वैसा क्यों नहीं है? Why are you not like that? And I always say that I said if comparison करना है तो हर level पे करो. हमारी सड़कें भी उस देश की तरह नहीं है. तो सड़कों को भी compare करो. So इसको क्यों कर रहे हो? But that's the on the lighter side. But in 2015, when I was being grilled in one of the sessions and said that, why don't you do this and why don't you do that and why don't? So that's the time I found the guts again to say that, give me a mandate. I don't have a mandate. You have told I'm doing this service as an internet, best effort. You can't roll out a service for the entire government as a best effort. It has to be backed up by a mandate. And again, the decision makers, they saw my point of view that yes, she needs a mandate because with a mandate, you get the associated support in terms of funds, in terms of manpower. So they gave me the mandate. That was the release of the email policy for the government of India in the year 2015. And since then, there's been no stopping. I mean, today we have crossed 3 million, which is again the largest service globally. There is not a single service which is this scale in the world. And of course, as a result, I'm on my toes 24/7 because it's one of the most targeted services from a cyber warfare, cybersecurity standpoint. 24/7, it's a battle. We're always at war. I keep telling my husband, I said, troops fight on the front, here we're fighting every day 24/7 with no break. So it's a most targeted service. But we're holding on and we are working on the way up. So, and email as a technology is something I always believe is the rock star of all technologies. I mean, so many disruptive technologies have come, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Facebook, but email is the rock star. It's going nowhere. Yeah. Going nowhere. So any disruptive technology can come and go, but email and its requirement and the very essence of the protocol underlying it has continue to remain. But we must
you kind of take for granted, right? You kind of assume it's always going to be there.
Absolutely. But SMTP was designed with a flaw. It was not meant to be secure. By the very definition of RFC, the technical audience getting something called as request for comments, it was never designed to be secure. So now we are building layers of security on top of it. Yes. So that's where it comes. There have been very versions of SMTP, but then we are evolving, we're getting there. And I hope that we continue to serve the government the best way that we possibly can. So it's been, again, a very rewarding journey, very rewarding.
Yeah, just listening to you, and this is something that comes up in conversation multiple times, industry to industry. Are, professions like yours, do you think they're gender agnostic? Because, of course, you don't seem to have anything stop you from doing what you needed to. But it's also true, and many of us maybe operate from a place of privilege, that sometimes some of these obstacles that we don't face, we assume don't exist for other people. But in your experience, are professions like these, especially from a government perspective, are they truly gender agnostic? I mean, what's your opinion over the years? And things would have evolved in your time, right? You charted out your journey. So how does it look like looking back?
I have come to believe that we at the government are doing a better job than you guys are. So we definitely are more gender agnostic. I mean, I don't need to look far for that also. Look at the ladies leading in the government. They're tremendous. I don't really need to look far. I have my own Director General. Tremendous, an awesome lady. I mean, look at her. That's in a professional capacity. Women surrounding me have always been strong. I look at my mother. I've spoken about her a couple of times. I mean, she's an extremely strong lady because, like they say, an apple does not fall very far from the tree. So I am like that, and my daughter is a more ferocious bulldog than I am. So it's wonderful. So but at the end of it, I would like to believe that professions should be gender agnostic, but there's certain tags Like nurses, by definition, the first thought that comes to mind is going to be a lady, but that's need not necessarily be true. Engineering is something which, at least the era I'm talking about when I was there, it was generally associated with being a guy. But today, the lines are definitely blurring. I would like to believe they should be gender agnostic, but again, irrespective of the gender, what makes a person capable to deliver something is its own personal capacity. And what a person should not allow that to limit is a gender. I mean, there are women who are meek, there are women who can't put their point across, there are women who cannot lead, there are women who cannot fight for what they think is right. But then that strength, they have to be provided with an ecosystem. For that statement to be true, that professions to be gender agnostic, the women need to be treated from the day one that they are no different. My daughter, at some point in time, she said, Mama, they've been raised like that. And she said, Mama, don't worry, he's a guy, he'll come around. So I mean, she does not believe for a moment that there's something she can't do. So the ecosystem needs to build. And I really believe that we are reaching there. We are definitely reaching there. I would like to, at least in the government, I feel, because I have had 2 secretaries in the past and during my tenure, again, very strong ladies, and I've learned a lot from them. And so I would like to believe that they should be gender agnostic, although that's not necessarily true from a corporate world. Perhaps, again, I could be misleading. You can correct me, I'm wrong here. But I would like to believe I'm wrong. I'd firmly like to believe I'm wrong. But in the government, we are definitely gender agnostic. It does not matter. I deliver, it does not matter what my gender is. The government has given me that liberty, and I would like to continue with that.
Fascinating, fascinating. I mean, I know we could carry on the conversation. It's a pleasure talking to you. And some of these stories are, things that you'll tell your grandchildren, right? This is the kind of stuff that never, it's always interesting and always, great to hear. But just one final piece of advice to industry, people like ourselves, right? As we try to, help you serve the nation, because ultimately, all of this comes back multifold to our own citizens, right? So, things that we could potentially do better to help you do any advice for firms like ours?
You are the nut and bolt of the whole wheel. I mean, we cannot possibly exist without the corporate world. You're very much there. You're part of our ecosystem. And I've had some brilliant technology partners in the past, and I continue to have, VMware being an excellent example. You've been part of practically every technical endeavor of mine. So why only VMware? I mean, there's so many more corporates, but the only thing I would like to give as an advice is you're doing a brilliant job when it comes to technology, because we cannot deliver on any platform without your assistance. That goes without saying. The only part that I would like to mention here is the sense of ownership. I mean, at the end of the day, when I roll out a service or a delivery, I take a sense of ownership. I was at one point in time when I was in my early years, I was told a very sarkari statement, which I did not agree with. They said that isko dil se mat lagao. I was told, itna emotional mat ho, Seema, isko dil se mat lagao. And my reaction was कि अगर मैं दिल से नहीं लगाऊंगी तो रात को 12 बजे फोन का जवाब नहीं दूंगी. The only reason I respond to a call of a service not working at 12 o'clock at night is because मैंने दिल से लगाया है उस service को. So the only thing is, when I partner with a corporate partner, I want them to take the service dil se. Yeah. They need to be as invested in the service delivery as I am leading it. They cannot sit on the sidelines and watch me squirm and cry while they keep telling me, ma'am, हमारी तो shift खत्म हो गई है मलेशिया में, अगला आदमी आएगा, shift लेगा, उसको समझाएंगे, फिर वो आएगा, तो मतलब मेरी जिंदगी के तो 3 घंटे गए. I cannot possibly deliver on a service of the expectation of the scale that we're talking about if I don't have a partner who's as invested in my endeavor as I am. And I'm talking from individual capacities. And I generally like to deal with people rather than organizations, because it's people who drive an organization. You can have brilliant policies, but if the people do not implement it with the intent, because a policy is never written with an intent not to deliver. A policy is always written with an intent to deliver. It's the interpretation that messes it up. So it's the interpretation that needs to be, that is the interpretation, the individual interpreting the policy and the intent and the thought behind it has to be a positive frame of mind. So when I deal with the corporate world, I deal with the people who are driving those corporates, and I like to partner with such people, and such people, irrespective of the organization they represent, they will deliver. They will deliver. So I have had some brilliant technical partners, both from an organization level, of course, and the individuals representing those corporates too. in my 27 years, I mean, I built associations based on that when I'm crying and I'm in trouble, stand by me. You cannot show me timelines. You cannot show me time zones. You cannot show me that. So that's the only input I had for the corporate world, that be as invested in the service being rolled out as I am. I means the government.
Of course.
You should be as invested. So that's other than that, brilliant job done by everyone.
There you go. And you live up to your reputation. You pull no punches. You're not being nice. You're saying, hey, own this up. Don't just sell me stuff and walk away. Walk the journey with me. Walk in my shoes. Live my pain and be there jointly. In good times and bad. And there's some of these things, when you say them, they sound so like commonsensical, but it's amazing how often we don't sometimes miss out on these basics. So thank you for that very direct, very clear feedback to us, and personally for VMware, we'll absolutely take that on board and continue raising the bar. But it's been a fascinating conversation. I wish we could continue this for some more time. But once again, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I'm sure it gave my audience a completely different lens to a different facet of what is possible with technology in our world today. So as always, pleasure talking to you, ma'am. And once again, thank you for sharing the platform with us today.
Thank you for having me. And I hope I could respond as I thought I would. Thank you.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.